The night sky over the Earth Kingdom trembled with light. Farmers in distant valleys looked up from their fields as a streak of fire cut across the heavens, burning brighter than any comet before it. In the capital of Ba Sing Se, the sages gathered in the upper towers, reading the omens in silence. It was no natural star. It moved with purpose, descending faster, trailing a silver plume that split the clouds. The monks of the Western Air Temple awoke from meditation, their eyes following the arc as it tore across the firmament and vanished beyond the mountains. It struck in the heart of the Fire Nation Sea, an explosion so vast the waves themselves recoiled. A column of steam rose, bright as dawn, and for a heartbeat, every volcano on the horizon seemed to answer its call. Fishermen miles away were thrown from their boats by the shockwave. In the caldera fortress of Ember Island, Fire Lord Ozai stood upon his balcony, eyes narrowed as the light faded. His generals whispered about weapons, omens, and spirits. Ozai said nothing. He simply turned and ordered reconnaissance. By morning, the Fire Nation fleet had mobilized. Great iron ships cut through the waves, their searchlights sweeping the fog. On the third day, one of the scouts founded an island where none had been before. Blackened earth still smoked from the impact. The sand had turned to glass. In the center of the crater, half buried in molten rock, lay something that gleamed blue beneath the ash. The soldiers approached with caution. Heat radiated from it still, waves of it shimmer in the air. But as the first soldier extended his gauntlet to touch the object, the earth trembled. The molten crust cracked, and from within the stone rose a figure, human in form, tall, broad-shouldered, his skin unmarked despite the fire that birthed him. A crimson cape unfurled behind him, untouched by wind. The soldiers froze. The being looked around slowly, confusion in his eyes. The air smelled of salt and ash, the sky heavy with storm. He tried to speak, but his voice came out hoarse, choked with smoke. "Where am I?" The commander raised his spear. Identify yourself, Spirit." "Spirit?" The man frowned. His gaze dropped to the insignia on his chest, a stylized S, shining gold against blue. "My name is Kal-El," he said quietly. "I come from..." He hesitated. The memories were fragmented. A blinding light, the distortion of space, then falling. "I don't know how I got here." Before the commander could reply, the Fire Nation S-ships opened fire. The first volley hit the beach like thunder, shells exploding around him, throwing shards of glass into the air. The being didn't flinch. His eyes glowed faintly red. When the next barrage came, he raised a hand. The shell stopped midair, frozen. For a moment, time itself seemed to hesitate. Then the projectiles turned back, sweeping across the sea toward the ships that had launched them. A pillar of water and flame erupted as the fleet vanished beneath its own fire. The shockwave rolled across the ocean, flattening waves for miles. When the smoke cleared, nothing moved but the wind. High above, on his air bison, Aang saw the column of steam rising from the horizon. They had been tracking Fire Nation ships for weeks, freeing prisoners and villages caught in the path of war. But this was different. The air itself seemed wrong, heavy with the scent of scorched metal. Katara shaded her eyes. What is that?" "I don't know," he said. Appa banked lower. As they neared the island, the ocean glowed faintly red beneath the surface. The sand was black, still warm to the touch. In the center stood the crater, and in that crater stood him. Superman turned as the bison landed. His expression softened immediately at the sight of them. A boy with an arrow tattoo, a girl with water skins at her side, and a scowling warrior gripping his boomerang. He could sense their caution, their uncertainty. Ong slid from Appa's saddle, eyes wide. "Are you a spirit?" The question was familiar now. He almost smiled. "No, I'm just a man." Sokka squinted. "Yeah, right. A man who stands in lava without melting his boots." Superman looked down. The molten rock barely steamed under his feet. "It doesn't hurt me," he admitted. "I think something went wrong. I fell through. I don't even know what. One moment, I was above a city. The next..." He gestured to the smoking crater. Katara stepped closer, her instincts reading the compassion in his eyes. "You were hurt." He shook his head. "Not like that. Just lost." Before Aang could speak again, the horizon lit up. Another Fire Nation fleet was approaching, larger this time, moving fast. Sokka cursed under his breath. "They tracked us." Superman's eyes narrowed. His hearing caught the thrum of engines, the grinding of steel, the nervous heartbeats of men preparing to fire. "Get behind me." Katara frowned. "Wait, what are you?" The first shell screamed through the air. He moved faster than sound, rising from the ground in a blur of color. The shell detonated harmlessly in the sky as he caught it mid-flight and crushed it to dust. The fleet opened fire in panic, but the man in blue was already among them, tearing through their engines like paper. The others could only watch as the sky became a storm of light. Ships erupted one after another, their cannons silenced by invisible hands. When it was over, silence fell again, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal as debris rained into the sea. Aang's mouth hung open. He stopped an entire fleet. Sokka stared. "Yeah, and you thought my boomerang was impressive." Katara whispered, "He's not from our world." When Superman returned to the island, the wind rippled his cape like fire. His face was calm, but his eyes held a weight that even Aang could feel. "They would have killed you," he said softly. Aang nodded, unsure what to say. He had never seen power like this. Not even the Avatar state felt so absolute. "You saved us," he said quietly. "I save people. It's what I'll do." They brought him to the nearest Earth Kingdom village. The people there had suffered months of raids from the Fire Nation. When Superman entered, they fell silent. Children peered from behind doors. The elders bowed, whispering prayers to unseen spirits. Aang introduced him as Kaul. The name spread quickly. Soon, the villagers were lighting lanterns in his honor. They called him the Star That Fell. For the first time since arriving, Clark Kent smiled. But word traveled fast. By the time night fell again, reports had already reached the Fire Nation capital. An unknown being had annihilated 2 fleets in a single day. Ozai summoned his advisors. "Describe it," he demanded. "A man, my lord," said the admiral. "He flies. Fire cannot harm him. He moves faster than the eye can see. A spirit? Perhaps, but not one known to our sages." Ozai turned to Azula, who stood silently at the edge of the chamber. "Find him," he said. "If he is a spirit, we will bind him. If he is a man, we will break him." Azula smiled faintly. "It would be my honor." That night, Zuko stood on the deck of his ship, watching the stars. His uncle poured tea beside him, calm as ever. "They say a star fell from the heavens," Zuko muttered. Iroh nodded. "Perhaps the world is sending us help." Zuko's jaw tightened. Or another weapon. In the Earth Kingdom village, Aang watched Superman help rebuild burned houses, lifting beams of wood as though they weighed nothing. Children followed him in awe. Katara couldn't look away. He is different, but he cares. Aang nodded, yet deep down he felt something else, a subtle unease. Power like that had no place in a world built on balance. That night, as the village slept, Aang went to the hill overlooking the sea. Superman stood there, gazing at the horizon. "You don't belong here," Aang said gently. "I know," Clark replied, "but until I find a way home, I'll do what I can." Aang hesitated. This world isn't like others. Power changes things. The balance between nations, between people and spirits, it is fragile. Superman looked at him, eyes steady. "Where I am from, people suffer when those with power do nothing. Balance is good, but it means nothing if evil goes unopposed." The words lingered long after Aang left. 2 days later, the Fire Nation struck again, this time with their airships. Dozens darkened the sky, engines roaring. The village panicked. Aang prepared to enter the Avatar state, but before he could, Superman rose into the sky, faster than lightning. He tore through the first ship's hull, ripped the engines from the second, melted the cannons of the third with beams of heat from his eyes. The sky burned with falling wreckage. Soldiers screamed as their airships collapsed into the sea. When the last vessel fell, Superman hovered above the smoke, listening. He could hear the survivors, the cries of the injured. He dove back into the flames, pulling men from wreckage, carrying them to shore. Katara stared. He is saving them, the enemy soldiers. He said all life matters, Aang whispered. By sunset, the sea was calm again. Superman stood on the beach, surrounded by Fire Nation prisoners, too afraid to move. "No one else dies today," he told them. "The war ends when you choose to stop fighting." The prisoners bowed their heads. They had never seen mercy from someone so powerful. But mercy breeds fear. In the Fire Nation capital, Ozai S. Fury was legend. "He dares to humiliate my armies." His roar shook the palace. "If the spirits favor him, then we will call upon the darkest spirits of our own." Deep in the volcano beneath the capital, priests of the Fire Nation began ancient rites long forbidden. They called to the underworld for balance, for a weapon that could match the one that fell from the stars. Far away, beneath the ocean, the spirits stirred. In the spirit world, a ripple spread across the eternal mist. Ancient beings turned their gaze toward the mortal realm. One voice, vast and calm, spoke. "A being not of this world has entered the cycle. He does not bend, yet bends all." Another answered, colder. "He will unmake balance if left unchecked." Ravai's light trembled. Perhaps, or perhaps, he will remind mankind what hope feels like. The line between worlds began to blur. Aang woke that night to a whisper in the wind. The spirits were restless. The presence of Superman had already begun to alter the flow of energy across the nations. Firebenders found their flames less wild. Earthbenders felt lighter on their feet. Even waterbenders near the coast reported strange tides. Balance was shifting. In the following days, Superman's deeds spread like legend. He stopped Fire Nation raids across the continent, intercepted entire battalions with a single gesture, and extinguished burning forests with a wave of wind. Villages began carving his symbol into their banners. Songs of the Sky Savior spread faster than Fire Nation propaganda could contain them. Some called him a spirit of mercy, others a god. And in the shadow of those rumors, Aang began to fade. Even his allies noticed. In every crisis, people no longer called for the Avatar. They called for the man who could fly. Superman tried to stay humble, helping quietly, avoiding attention, but hope was its own gravity, and soon the world revolved around him. When he stood beneath the banyan trees of the swamp, the spirits appeared to him for the first time, shapes of mist and light, ancient and vast. "You are not part of this world," one whispered. "Your strength is not born of balance. You bring disruption to the cycle." Superman's voice was calm. "If saving lives breaks your balance, maybe it needs breaking." The spirits recoiled. Even they could feel the conviction in his words. From his fortress, Ozai watched with growing dread. For the first time in memory, his fleets had failed, his armies demoralized, and across the Earth Kingdom, a new power was rising, one that did not answer to him or to the Avatar. In the throne room, Azula bowed low. "Father, allow me to test him." Ozai's eyes gleamed. "How?" "With lightning." The seas around Fire Nation boiled under stormlight. Above the horizon, thunder cracked without rain, an omen the old sailors whispered of, but hadn't seen in 100 years. In this palace carved from black basalt, Ozai stood before a wall of flame and watched the reports arrive. His ships, his fleets, his weapons, all silenced by a single man. A man who walked through fire and scattered iron like dust. Azura, Ozai's daughter, stood beside him, silent, calculating. Her eyes gleamed like the blade of a knife waiting to be drawn. "He fell from the heavens," one of the courtiers stammered. "The soldiers call him Superman." "A god then?" Ozai murmured. "A spirit perhaps," said another. "The monks say the stars birthed him." "Then we'll burn the stars," Azura said, smiling faintly. Outside the capital, the volcanoes breathed smoke into a blood-red sky. The Empire prepared its counterstroke. Across the sea, Superman was rebuilding. The villagers of the Earth Kingdom green fields, scorched by the war, had begun to trust him. He helped harvest crops faster than entire teams could work. He lifted fallen beams from crushed homes. He smiled when children asked if he could really fly, then rose into the clouds until his cape was a red spark against the blue. To them, he was a myth, made flesh a spirit of mercy, the balance is forgotten brother. But for Aang, it was more complicated. He watched from a distance as the stranger bent neither wind, nor flame, nor water, nor earth, yet reshaped them all with his will. The villagers prayed to him instead of the spirits. They carved his symbol into their gates. That night, under the soft hum of crickets, Aang spoke to Katara by the fire. Every time he saves someone, he said, the world tilts a little more. She looked up from her bowl. He's saving lives. Isn't that what balance means? Balance isn't safety, the boy said quietly. It is harmony. Even mercy can become weight when it is one-sided. The healer sighed. Maybe the world needs a little imbalance to heal. The boy didn't answer. Somewhere far above them, thunder rumbled not from clouds, but from the sound of a man breaking the air. The next morning, Fire Nation struck again. Dozens of black airships rose from their dockyards, trailing steam like storm serpents. At their center flew Azura's flagship, its prow carved into the likeness of a phoenix. She stood on the bow, eyes fixed on the horizon. There, she whispered as the storm broke. Through the clouds, she saw him hovering over the sea like a statue of the gods themselves. His cape rippled, but his face was calm, almost mournful. Azura raised her hands, gathering lightning between her fingers until the air itself screamed. She launched it with a cry that shook the clouds. The bolt struck him full in the chest. For an instant, the world flashed white. The villagers on the distant coast saw the heavens burn. Then, when the light faded, he still stood, smoke curling from his shoulders, eyes faintly red. He looked down at her, not angry, not afraid, just sad. She fired again. This time, the lightning bent mid-air, twisting back toward the clouds and exploding harmlessly above her fleet. Azura staggered, stunned. He had redirected it. She smiled despite herself. Even gods can learn, she murmured. Her fleet opened fire iron shells, streaking upward, but Superman moved faster than sound. One by one, their engines fell silent, their cannons melted, their ships crippled, but not destroyed. When it ended, the fleet still floated, wounded but alive. He never killed. That was his flaw and his strength. Azura knelt on the deck, smoke curling from her hair, watching as he disappeared into the clouds. For the first time, she felt something like awe and something like fear. News of the battle spread faster than any messenger could carry it. In the taverns of Ba Sing, those said Superman had caught lightning with his bare hands. In the monasteries, the elders whispered that the spirits had sent their own avatar. Even Ozai began to doubt. He summoned his high sages, demanding an explanation. They told him of the old balance, a legend from before the elements split, before bending itself was born. In those days, it was said, beings of impossible will could shape reality not by element, but by purpose. If such a being walks the world again, Ozai said, he will not walk it long. He ordered the priests of the volcanoes to begin a ritual forbidden since the first Fire Lords, a summoning from the heart of the world itself. They gathered deep beneath the palace, where magma glowed like blood beneath the stone. The head priest raised his arms and spoke the ancient name Ognirath, the flame unending. The earth shuddered. From the molten core rose a form of living fire taller than the palace towers, its eyes twin furnaces, its body a storm of burning glass. The air itself blistered around it. What would you have of me? The spirit rumbled, its voice shaking the mountain. Ozai smiled. Balance. On the other side of the world, Superman was learning what it meant to be worshipped. Everywhere he went, people knelt. They offered fruit, flowers, songs. He told them not to. They did anyway. Hope had found shape, and hope rarely listened. At night, he sat apart from the others. Aang joined him, glancing at the stars. You don't sleep much, the boy said. Not since I fell, Superman replied. I can hear everything, every cry, every plea, every war drum. It doesn't stop. Then, how do you choose who to save? He thought about it. I don't. I save who I can, when I can, and hope that that's enough. The boy nodded, though he didn't fully understand. The world was starting to revolve around one man's choices. That was not balance. That was gravity. The spirit came at dawn. It rose from the volcano like the birth of a sun, spreading wings of molten fire that turned the sky crimson. Mountains melted, the air screamed. Every bender across the continent felt it, the pure essence of flame given thought. When Superman saw it, he rose to meet it. They collided above the sea. The sound was not thunder. It was creation breaking. Waves hundreds of feet high rippled outward. Islands vanished. The sky glowed red for miles. The spirit roared, its voice echoing through every volcano. You are not of this cycle, Skyborn. You burn too bright, too clean. Superman's voice was steady. Then, let me burn for those who can see. He struck with the force of a falling star, his fist shaking the horizon. The spirit staggered, but only grew larger, feeding on the heat. Each blow made it stronger. He realized too late. His power was fueling it. He changed tactics, flying higher, drawing the spirit after him until the air thinned, until even flame began to falter. Then Mu dove, pulling the monster into the sea. Steam exploded skyward. The ocean boiled. Under the waves, the spirit thrashed, its fire dimming, its roar turning to silence as the cold crushed its essence. The water itself glowed for miles, a silent aurora beneath the waves. When he finally emerged, dragging the last ember from the deep, the ocean had stilled. Around him floated shards of black glass, the spirit's remains, cooling into islands that would one day grow forests. He hovered there, exhausted, surrounded by steam and silence. From the shore, Aang watched in awe. "He did it," he whispered. The healer nodded, eyes wide. "He saved us again." But the swamp trees miles away shivered. The spirits whispered through their roots, "Balance breaks further." That night, Superman walked alone along the beach. His cape was tattered, his hands scarred from heat that could melt stone. He had saved millions, yet he felt heavier than ever. The healer found him there. She knelt beside him, touching the burns that still glowed faintly. "You're hurt," she said softly. "It's fine," he murmured. "It is not. You bleed, you tire, you feel. That means you're human." He looked at her for a long moment. "Where I am from, people said I wasn't too strong, too different, but I always believed being human was about what you choose, not what you can do." Her eyes softened. "Then choose to rest." He smiled faintly. "If I stop, who keeps the world from falling apart?" She didn't answer. There was no answer that didn't sound small next to him. In the capital, Ozias' anger had cooled into something worse, curiosity. He asked his scholars, "What happens to the world when balance dies?" They had no answer. He looked toward the horizon, where the steam from the battle still hung in the sky. Then, perhaps, it is time to ask the spirits ourselves. Deep in meditation, his soul slipped into the spirit realm. There, among endless mist and drifting lights, he found them waiting: Rava, the spirit of peace, and her shadow twin, Vatu, the spirit of chaos. Rava spoke first. "You call upon us for vengeance, Emperor, but the imbalance you feel is not caused by war. It is caused by hope too strong for this world." Vatu's laughter echoed like a storm. "Yes, the Skyborn one. He breaks the rules. I like him." Rava's light dimmed. He must return to where he came from, or the balance will collapse entirely. Ozai smiled. "Then perhaps collapse is what we need." He awoke with purpose. Weeks passed. The world rebuilt itself, though not in peace. The air temples filled with debate. Some monks declared Superman the reincarnation of a forgotten avatar. Others called him a false spirit sent to test humanity. Among the common folk, his symbol became a banner of rebellion. Peasants painted it on their walls. Soldiers deserted, choosing mercy over conquest. Every act of kindness he performed lit another flame of defiance. And with each one, Ozai's shadow stretched longer. Fire Nation began constructing something vast, a ring of obsidian towers around the capital, feeding power from the volcanoes below. The sages whispered that it was not a weapon, but a door. When Superman arrived at the ruins of a coastal temple, he found Aang waiting. "You knew this would happen," the boy said quietly. "I hoped it wouldn't too," the man replied. "They're going to open something, aren't they?" "Yes." "Then we stop them together." Superman looked down, then placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. You don't understand what is coming. They are not opening a weapon, they reopening a hole. And when it opens, it won't stop until it swallows everything. The boy met his eyes, calm and certain. Then we'll close it. Far to the south, lightning split the clouds. The first of the obsidian towers pulsed red, sending waves of heat across the ocean. In the spirit world, the mist recoiled. A gateway was forming between fire and void, between worlds. And through that growing wound in reality, something immense began to stir. The sky turned crimson. The seas whispered with rising steam. The balance had cracked, and at its center, two forces moved toward one another, the boy born of all elements, and the man who needed none. The spirits watched in silence. Hope had become a weapon, and the final battle for balance had just begun. The sky had turned the color of burning copper. From horizon to horizon, towers of obsidian bled red light into the clouds, each pulse echoing like a heartbeat beneath the world. In the capital of Fire Nation, Ozai stood before the completed ring, his gate between worlds, while magma rolled beneath the palace floors. The old balance kept us small, he said to his daughter. Tonight we unmake it. Azura's eyes flicked toward the trembling horizon. And if it swallows us too, then we burn brighter than the stars that made him. Above them, the gateway opened, an expanding wound of light and sound. The air shimmered, gravity bent, and a voice like metal scraping against time whispered through it. Far away, Superman saw the rift tear open. He could feel it before he saw it, the pull, like the universe calling him home, yet wrong, twisted. It hummed with a tone that made his bones ache. He turned to Aang and the healer waiting on the cliffs. The wind lashed at them. Even the clouds fled from the storm. This is it, the boy said. The world's heartbeat is changing. Superman nodded. If that door stays open, everything will bleed through spirit, matter, life itself. Can you close it? He hesitated. Maybe, but it'll fight back. Then we'll fight with you, the healer said. He looked at them, both two children who had carried a world on their shoulders, and felt something stir that no power had ever given him, belonging. They reached the edge of the empire as dawn broke. The sea had boiled away, replaced by a field of glass and ash. The obsidian towers rose from it like black teeth. Lightning rippled between them, feeding the portal as growing light. Ozai waited atop the highest spire, surrounded by his sages. Azura stood apart, silent, the blue glow of her lightning dancing at her fingertips. You came, Ozai called across the wind. Tell me, Skyborn, are you the world's savior or its jailer? I am neither, Superman said. I am someone who can watch it die, then watch it be reborn. Ozai thrust his staff into the magma vein running beneath the tower. Fire roared upward, a column of molten fury feeding the portal. The sky cracked open. The battle began without sound. One instant, Superman was there. The next, he was a blur, striking the base of the towers, shattering them faster than lightning. Each one exploded into shards, but as they fell, the portal grew brighter, feeding on destruction itself. Aang fought beside him, bending gusts strong enough to redirect lava. The healer summoned waves from the shattered sea, dousing flames before they reached nearby villages. Then came Azura. Her lightning cut through smoke like knives of glass, each strike aimed not to kill, but to test. You could end this, she shouted. You could rule with him. The world already kneels to you. He caught one of her bolts mid-flight and let it dissipate harmlessly through his hand. "If I rule," he said, "there is no one left to be free." She faltered for just a breath, and in that breath the rift screamed. From its center descended something colossal, not spirit, not matter, a shape of endless fire wearing the hint of a human face. The same voice that had whispered through the gateway now filled every mind, returned, unfinished creation, Agnirath reborn, not as a beast of flame, but as the idea of domination itself. Ozai fell to his knees, laughing. Behold, the heart of all power. Superman rose into the storm to meet it. He struck once, twice, each blow brighter than the sun, and each one did nothing. The thing absorbed him, growing until its shoulders brushed the clouds. It spoke inside his mind. You are the imbalance. You are the light that blinds. He felt the truth in it. Every life he'd saved, every army he'd stopped, had bent the world around him. Hope had weight. Hope had consequence. Below, Aang closed his eyes and entered the stillness of the Avatar spirit that lived within all cycles of life. His tattoos glowed white. The winds themselves began to sing. "Sky Man," he shouted over the storm, "you can defy it by force. You have to share it." The words cut through the noise like a blade of air. Share it, he understood. Superman stopped resisting. He spread his arms wide, letting the creature's was fire pour through him. It burned not flesh, but memory, pride, purpose. He thought of every hand who'd lifted from ruin, every world that had called him savior. And instead of holding that power, he released it. Light erupted from him in a wave of pure intent, neither fire nor wind, but the simple will to live. It rolled outward, passing through the spirit, through the towers, through Ozai himself. Every living thing felt it like a heartbeat echoing in their chest. The portal shuddered, its edges folded inward, devouring itself, until only a point of white remained. Then it vanished, leaving silence and falling ash. Agnirath was gone. So was Superman. When the smoke cleared, Aang hovered above the ruins, his glow fading. Ozai's armies had fled. Azura knelt among the ashes, staring at the empty sky. "He's gone," the healer whispered. The boy nodded. "Not gone. Given." "Given?" "He returned what wasn't ours to keep. They found only his cape drifting in the wind, torn but unburned." The healer folded it carefully, tears streaking her soot-stained face. Weeks turned to months. The seas cooled, the land healed. Fire Nation retreated behind its borders. People began to rebuild again, not waiting for gods, not praying for spirits, but helping each other the way he had taught them. In every village, someone painted the same simple symbol, two arcs meeting in the shape of wings, not worship, but remembrance. Aang often visited the beach where the glass met the sand. Sometimes, when the wind was right, he swore he heard it, a faint rush of air, a heartbeat hidden in the clouds. The healer would smile. "He is watching." Maybe the boy would answer, or maybe he became the balance he tried to protect. Years later, under a calm sky, a child was born in the northern hills. He grew strong, kind, unafraid of storms. When lightning struck near him, it curved away. When others fought, he could stop them with a single word. On his 16th birthday, a comet passed overhead, and for a heartbeat, the night shone red and blue together. The elders said the world had remembered its promise. And somewhere beyond the veil between worlds, Superman opened his eyes. Around him stretched a field of stars, neither his old home nor the new one, but something between. He felt the pulse of both realms through his hands. A voice, soft and vast, spoke within the light. Balance restored, hope endures. He smiled. Then my work is not done. With a single motion, he rose from the void and flew toward the next dawn.